Psychology shows that some of the most common everyday habits are actually signs your brain is under far more pressure than you realize. But these behaviors aren't flaws or failures. They're signals, often misread and dismissed. Your mind uses them to cope, to protect you, and to make sense of a world that feels overwhelming. And when you understand these signals, your entire life begins to feel clearer and more manageable. Hit like and subscribe, and we'll uncover what these behaviors are really saying. Chapter 1. Impulse Control Disorder. Have you ever wondered why some decisions feel like they come out of nowhere, almost like your body moved before your mind had a chance to speak? When this happens repeatedly, it isn't a sign that you're reckless or irresponsible. It's often a sign that your internal braking system is struggling. Your brain normally has a built-in pause, a moment where it evaluates consequences and weighs risk. But sometimes that pause is so faint, you barely feel it. That's why you might find yourself buying things you don't need, eating long past fullness, or snapping in anger before you fully understand what set you off. These moments aren't about a lack of willpower. They're about a brain trying to quiet discomfort as fast as possible. And afterward, when the calm fades, you're left sorting through regret that feels heavier than the moment that caused it. Over time, this can make you question your own judgment, even though the deeper issue is the brain's urgency to release pressure. And when you look closely at that urgency, you start to notice another pattern, quietly shaping how you react to the world. Chapter 2. Catastrophic Thinking. Psychology shows that your mind can turn the smallest spark into a 5-alarm fire without you even realizing it. This doesn't mean you're dramatic or overly sensitive. It means your brain has learned to scan for danger in places where most people feel completely safe. When a text goes unanswered or someone's tone shifts slightly, your mind rushes to create the worst possible outcome because it's trying to keep you prepared. It exaggerates threats, not to scare you, but to protect you from being caught off guard again. And even when you logically know nothing is wrong, the emotional alarm is so loud that logic doesn't stand a chance. Over time, this constant forecasting of disaster can leave you exhausted, always waiting for something that never actually happens. But the real story isn't the fear itself. It's the way your mind is trying to shield you from pain you've already lived through. And if you pay attention to that protective instinct, you start to notice how it shapes the moments you replay over and over in your head. Chapter 3. Rumination and Mental Time Traveling. You know that feeling when your mind drifts back to a moment you wish you could rewrite, and you can't understand why it keeps resurfacing? Rumination isn't a sign that you're stuck in the past on purpose. It's a sign that your brain is trying desperately to solve something it believes is unfinished. It replays conversations, choices, and imagined outcomes because it thinks one more review might finally bring relief. But instead of clarity, all it gives you is tension, because the brain is looping through a problem that doesn't have a clean answer. That's why you can be lying in bed at night, scripting conversations that will never happen, or reliving moments that should have faded years ago. Your mind is scanning for danger, trying to prepare you, trying to prevent you from being blindsided again. And even though it feels frustrating, this mental time travel is often a sign of deeper overwhelm that hasn't been fully acknowledged. When you notice how your thoughts drift like this, you begin to see the subtle ways your emotional world starts to dim. Chapter 4. Emotional blunting. People often assume feeling nothing means you're finally calm, but psychology shows that emotional numbness is one of the most misunderstood distress signals your brain can send. Emotional blunting doesn't happen because you don't care. It happens because your mind has quietly lowered the volume on your feelings to protect you from overload. Moments that should spark joy, sadness, or excitement land with a dull thud, leaving you watching your life as if it belongs to someone else. It's a kind of internal shutdown, where your nervous system decides that feeling less is safer than feeling too much. You might smile, nod, or respond the way you think you're supposed to, but inside, everything feels muted, distant, or strangely flat. This isn't a lack of emotion. It's your mind rationing energy, trying to keep you functioning when stress or pain becomes too heavy. And beneath that muted surface, something deeper is happening. Your brain is quietly shifting the way you experience pleasure itself. Chapter 5. Anhedonia. Imagine returning to something you once loved, your favorite food, a hobby, a person, and feeling absolutely nothing, as if the meaning quietly slipped out when you weren't looking. Anhedonia isn't about losing interest because you've changed. It's about a brain whose reward system has gone offline in an effort to conserve energy. The dopamine signals that once lit up small moments now flicker weakly, leaving experiences that used to feel rich suddenly flat or distant. You might find yourself moving through life on autopilot, trying to recreate old sparks that never seem to catch. Social time feels draining, music feels hollow, and even rest doesn't restore you the way it used to. It's not that you're ungrateful or disengaged. It's that your mind is operating in survival mode, cutting off the very sensations that make things feel alive. And when your world loses color like this, even the smallest decisions can start to feel heavier than they should. Chapter 6. Decision paralysis. There's a quiet kind of clarity that comes when you finally understand why even the simplest choices can feel impossibly heavy. Decision paralysis isn't about being indecisive or picky. It's about a brain that's working overtime to protect you from making the wrong move. Instead of choosing, your mind starts scanning every possible outcome, searching for perfect certainty in a world that never offers it. That's why standing in a grocery aisle can feel strangely overwhelming, or why choosing a show to watch can stretch into half an hour of scrolling. Your brain isn't stalling because it doesn't know what you want. It's stalling because it fears the discomfort of regret, disappointment, or judgment. And the more pressure you feel, the more your mind freezes, convinced that pausing is safer than acting. Beneath all of this is a deep desire for safety that often goes unnoticed, shaping choices far beyond the moment you're stuck in. And when you look at that need for safety closely, another pattern begins to reveal itself. Chapter 7. Excessive reassurance seeking. You fire off a quick, "Are you sure it's okay?" before you can stop yourself. And in that split second, you already know the answer won't quiet the feeling for long. This pattern isn't neediness or insecurity. It's your brain trying to soothe an internal alarm that never fully shuts off. Even when someone gives you a clear answer, the relief fades almost immediately because your mind isn't looking for information. It's looking for certainty. And certainty is something the brain can't actually have, no matter how many times you ask, check, or clarify. That's why you might confess small mistakes from years ago, or ask for reassurance about things you logically understand. You're trying to silence a discomfort that feels physical, heavy, and urgent, even when nothing is wrong at all. The cycle can be exhausting. Brief relief, rising doubt, the urge to ask again, but it comes from a place of wanting connection and stability. And when you trace that urge back to its source, you often find a deeper sensitivity that shapes the way you respond to the slightest emotional shift. Chapter 8. Rejection Sensitivity Dysphoria, RSD. You can feel perfectly fine one moment, then shattered by a tiny comment or a passing expression the next. And you wonder why it hits so hard. This reaction isn't overthinking or dramatics. It's a sign that your brain registers potential rejection with the same intensity as physical pain. Even the smallest hint of disapproval can trigger a sudden rush of panic, because your mind is wired to detect social danger long before you consciously notice it. That's why a delayed text, a neutral tone, or a distracted glance can leave you spiraling, convinced you did something wrong. People with this sensitivity often become experts at reading micro-expressions, adjusting themselves constantly, trying to prevent conflict that isn't even there. And behind that effort is a deep longing to feel secure in your relationships, without having to decode every interaction for hidden threats. When you understand where this sensitivity comes from, another behavior begins to make more sense: the rituals and habits your mind creates to keep fear from breaking through. Chapter 9. Obsessive-compulsive rituals, OCD. You're standing at the door, your hand on the lock, checking it again even though you watched yourself secure it. Why does that moment feel so urgent and impossible to ignore? OCD rituals don't come from perfectionism or preference. They come from a brain that feels a wave of danger long before your logical mind can intervene. These rituals, checking, arranging, washing, repeating, are your mind's attempt to create safety in a world that suddenly feels unpredictable. For a moment, the action brings relief, like you've pushed back a threat only you can sense. But the calm never lasts for long. The fear returns, sharper than before, convincing you that one missed step could lead to catastrophe. That's why the ritual grows stronger over time. The brain learns that anxiety drops after the action, so it repeats the cycle again and again. It's not about control. It's about trying to quiet a fear that feels enormous and invisible at the same time. And when that fear starts spilling into your body, it can show up in ways that are even harder to hide. Chapter 10. Compulsive skin picking, excoriation disorder. You might catch yourself focused on a tiny spot on your skin, and before you realize it, minutes have passed and your body feels tense, almost locked into the motion. This isn't about a lack of discipline or a quirky habit. It's a sign that your brain is trying to release pressure through the only outlet it can control in that moment. The act creates a strange sense of relief, like your mind is exhaling after holding something heavy for too long, even though you're left with guilt or discomfort afterward. Your nervous system treats that small patch of skin as a target for all the tension you don't have words for, pulling your attention in until everything else fades away. And when the cycle keeps repeating, it's because your brain has learned that this brief physical action momentarily quiets the noise inside. Beneath the surface, this behavior isn't about the skin at all. It's about the mind trying to cope with overwhelm it hasn't fully processed. All of this comes back to one simple truth. Your mind isn't broken. It's doing its best to protect you in ways you were never taught to recognize. When you start seeing your patterns with compassion instead of fear, something inside you softens and begins to make sense. You realize your reactions aren't random. They're echoes of experiences your brain still holds carefully. If you'd like to keep growing with this kind of insight, you can like and subscribe at your own pace. And when you're ready, the next video explores the strange little traits that often reveal a level of intelligence you might not realize you have.